John Frost looked on the gathered crowd, now 3,000 strong. With heavy heart, his voice rang loud as he sang this loveless song. God is a guide from field, from wave, from plough, from anvil, and from loom. We come our country's rights to save and speak a tyrant faction's doom. We raise the watchword liberty. We will be free. For when the rising tide is turned in every London quarter, Parliament comes crashing down with Robert's Rules of Order. And bobbies took an oath to be our nation's warders, swearing that they would enforce Sir Robert's Rules of Order. Till Newport rose a million friends who rallied each supporter to join this flood of working men against Robert's Rules of Order. For when the rising tide is turned in every London quarter, Parliament comes crashing down with Robert's Rules of Order. Like this, on the steps of Parliament, John Frost stood proud and tall. A hush fell on this great event as he told them one and all, depose the gentry and the crown, depose the House of Lords, or join the Queen in exile by Robert's Rules of Order. So Chartists, Luddites, Communists, recall each faithful martyr who died so you could have your new world Robert's Rules of Order. Say it loud, vote your favor, shout it high. All in favor, you say aye. Favor, aye, favor, aye. A mandate of the people's cry. Favor, aye, favor, aye. Let's hear the opposition side. Like a stubborn donkey's bray. All opposed, you say nay. Opposed, opposed. The motion carries anyway. Currents change and bring to us our dear corrupted warder. In chains subdued and ill-abused, he's left with no supporters. Mobility's will can then proceed by our own rules of order. And we'll all cheer for country's sake when Robert's drawn in quarter. For when the rising tide is turned in every London quarter, Parliament shall be reborn with Robert's Rules of Order.
Hello, let's everyone hear how you hear.
Do you hear what I hear? Oh, wait, wrong holiday, sorry.
So, Mike he's got the camera I sent, so, you know,
yep.
he's looking as good as possible, so be kind.
I always said I have a face for Morse code, but, you know, this proves it.
And we're competing right now. I'm sorry, LP allies. They're doing their LNC business list thing and going overtime. Well, I think they start at 6. Their shows sometimes their shows can be longer than mine.
What they're talking about is going to take a while.
Yeah, their shows can go longer than mine. I might start doing LNC commentary again. I don't really want to compete with them, but my perspective's a little bit different, having been there. But they get pretty spicy. I was going to say mine would be spicier, but they get pretty spicy. So I don't know. I might start doing some. I might not. Look, Richard says you look good. You do. That camera is so much better. Okay, and Richard, he caught me today. He caught me participating on the Roberts Forum, which I just really don't do anymore. But again, I had some questions that I needed to make sure I was getting right for Pink Parliamentarian. But I forgot to tell you, before we get started on today's topic, you're going to want to go and read a discussion. If you really first take some Tylenol, but don't get pregnant. And
autism.
take a couple autism pills, and then go to the advanced one. There is a great discussion on. There's a main motion, and then there's a motion to substitute.
Okay.
And then someone wants to divide the motion to substitute.
They want to do what?
They want. So I'm not going to get it exactly right, but the main motion was something like, oh shit, I don't remember. Crap, I don't know. It's something like buy new furniture for the office, and they instead substituted it and said no, let's paint the walls and put in new carpet. And then someone wanted to divide the paint the walls from the buy the new carpet, which was in the substitute.
Oi.
And at first, when I read the question and I was thinking of the answer myself, I had it wrong. And I saw Dan Hahnemann's response, and at first I was thinking he was wrong. But the more I read and people were explaining it a bit more and like doing some, treeing it out, like doing a diagram.
Yeah.
Then I was like,
have to in this case.
Yeah, I get it wrong. It would be out of order, by the way, is the final answer. But it's a very interesting journey to get there. And the thread's not long. Sometimes those advanced threads are horrible. I'm not reading 5 pages of that.
I may have to go look at that one. That sounds, that's in the weeds.
Yeah, it's only like really 7 responses. It got resolved like really quickly. But it was an interesting discussion. I can only take so much there, but I got my division of the assembly questions. And Richard, again, in case you were wondering why I was so fixated on counted votes and division of the assembly, I was telling Mike that interesting thing about ordering a counted vote after the chair on their own already ordered a rising standing count. That's going to be my next Pink Parliamentarian episode, and I wanted to make sure I had it right.
You're going to need a flow chart for that one, too.
Yeah. Well, one reason I want to make sure I have it right, because he's very kind-hearted. Shmuel watches that show, because he wrote me an email afterwards. I told you, correcting my pronunciation, and I appreciated it, so I don't mean this in a...
Ooh.
Shmuel Gerber.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
That's how you pronounce his name.
Maybe I'm pronouncing it wrong, but one of the main dudes.
Yeah. Okay.
He wrote me because he said some of my pronunciations were driving him crazy, but my pronunciations drive everyone crazy. But he'll help me remember, because I always said parliamentary.
Yeah.
Or yes, and that's wrong. He says it's parliamentary. Wait, parliamentary is what I would say. See, he's corrected me to a point. I used to say parliamentary. And he's like, no, the emphasis isn't on tear, it's on men. He goes, and he said, I'm joking, but you should remember, as a woman, you want to just put the emphasis on men. Now I'll remember. So it's parliamentary, not parliamentary. He goes, it's parliamentarian, but it's parliamentary procedure. So I'll get that right. And what else did he correct?
You say potato, I say potato.
And he agrees with you with precedence, and I say precedence.
I probably never. Precedence.
I thought you said precedence. No. It's actually supposed to be precedence, apparently.
I always learned at precedence.
Yeah, but he wrote me very kindly. But now I'm paranoid. I'm like, oh my God, Shmuel's watching this show. I better not screw anything up. Yeah, and I just want to put Richard's comment here, even though it isn't what we're talking about. People could go check out the forum, and yeah, there's a difference between when the chair orders a counted vote and when the assembly does, like we discussed. Maybe it's already going to be in my Pink Parliamentarian. It's going to be a 2-parter, that one. There's another reason it's going to be a 2-parter, and Richard will probably like this, is the first part's mostly talking about Roberts, a little bit of AIPSC. But Canons had a really interesting section on division of the assembly. So I'm going to do a bonus episode that just reads out what Canons has to say.
Okay.
Anyway, I need to buy some more reference.
So in other words, you're dividing the question on division between multiple sources.
Oh, I know. Yes, I know what pronunciation he corrected me on. I said Demeters, and he says it's Demeters. Because I sometimes reference Demeter like the goddess.
That's Demeter, according to Euclid.
No, he says it's Demeter.
Excuse me.
Well, whoever the dude was, and I'm assuming it's a dude.
Bullfinch.
But I think it was even how I always thought it was Demeter. Demeter.
It was Demeter. That's straight out of Bullfinch, yeah.
Yeah.
Because
I was saying Demeter, I think. Whatever. Now I'm confused as to what I had wrong. But what is it again now? It's Demeter. Yeah. I used to say it wrong because, okay, I still love them because they smell so good. And oh God, I should say what I'm talking
Demeter's, I think,
about.
attracts your electrical use.
When I was young, teenager, early adulthood, I loved New Age bookstores. They
Yeah,
smell so good.
of
I
course they do.
love, they
They still
smell
do.
like sandalwood. Yeah, I love, and not because I was ever into reading tarot cards or anything. I just love tarot cards as art. Like I used to collect decks of tarot cards just because the drawings on them are so cool. And actually, but what I'm getting to is the lady who owned the New Age bookstore I went to. That was her name, but she pronounced it Demeter. So
Hmm.
that's why I had it wrong. Anyway, but it's Demeter for the dude whose last name that is. No, he says it's Demeter.
I'm looking for something very specific here.
Okay, I'm good. I should look up now. I know people want us to get into our discussion, but we tend to be rambly. I want to look up Shmuel's email now because now I'm confusing myself. If I could
Go
find
ahead.
his email.
Go ahead. I'm checking something out real quick here.
Yeah, here's his email. Okay. He said the way you pronounce the word, well, I was saying it parliamentary, he goes, is driving me bonkers.
You realize Bonkers was a Parker Brothers board game back in the 80s. That was actually pretty fun to play. So,
He
by the
goes,
way, if you're
the
talking about,
emphasis, I'm sorry.
go ahead. Go ahead.
He goes, the emphasis is on men and not on Terry. And then he said,
Was Terry male or female?
oh, here's how I was pronouncing it wrong. Yeah, he said Demeter should be pronounced Demeter, not Demeter. Anyway. And then he said,
Demeter is what tracks your water and electrical use.
but now that's how I'll remember the right way. And then he said, finally, and I know this one's a bit contested, the recommended pronunciation of precedence is precedence, not precedence. So, yes, I was correct. So it is Demeter. Read Demeter, Tony. Okay, now I'll remember.
If you want to go check out a New Age store in Denver, South Broadway, just south of Yale, there's one called Goddess Isis Books and Gifts. They're one of the biggest ones in town, and they have that smell.
Actually, Gregory, I'm going to disagree with you. We're getting into grammar here. It is from who?
You're not a grammar.
So,
You don't need kids.
so Gregory says, I wonder if you agree. He says, what drives me bonkers is when the chair says, point of order from who, it's from whom. I disagree. It is from who.
Who's on first?
But do you agree it's from who, or do you think it's from whom?
When you say from who, yes. But if you're asking, if what they ask, if you put the from on the front end of the question, then it becomes whom.
How? Say what you mean.
From whom is the point of order raised?
Yes, right. But it would be
who, one of those things that drive people nuts in the language.
Yeah. So I would wonder what Richard would say. And Gregory, the reason why we say it's from who, you kind of substitute he and him for it. He made the point of order, I think is the way it would be. But maybe it would be maybe it would be whom. This is an interesting question. Maybe Gregory's right.
The way that I was taught it by a nun with a PhD in English when I was in college, because I was driving me nuts, was if you use he or she, you use who, and if you use him or her or them, you use whom. So
it would be point of order from him, but that doesn't make sense. It would be he made the point of order. I'm looking up now, Chicago Manual. I don't have a subscription anymore of style, who or whom following from. Let's see what it says. I could ask. Oh no, Gregory is right. Gregory is right. Under the rules of grammar, followed by the Chicago Manual of Style. This is AI. I'm assuming it's correct. You should use whom after a preposition, such as from. So I learned something new. Interesting. Thank you.
Whatever.
Thank you, Gregory. Okay. Well, we learned we learned some grammar today too. Okay. Let's get on to what our real subject is after this rambly. But everyone comes here for the rambly because that's what you and I do. And maybe LP Alliance is done.
It's warming up the crowd.
So I have it printed out. Let's
I have it on screen.
Okay. We're going to use a real well, let's read the question. I'm going to read the question, but we're going to go back and forth to applying it to a real life situation in the LP. We were going to discuss it before, but we really couldn't because it was in controversy and it could go before the JC. So I didn't even discuss the issue with Mike at all. But now that it's long since resolved, never a chance to be before the JC, we can talk about it now. So here's the question. This is actually Parliamentarians.org is National Association of Parliamentarians. So this is in the National Parliamentarian, that little booklet. Yeah. Questions and answers. Question 73. In our organization, the officers must live within 30 miles of the city center. Our vice president, for LP people, think vice chair. Roberts and lots of groups use president. I freaking hate that. But our vice president lives in the suburbs and was the only candidate for president. Shortly before the elections, the vice president moved from one part of her suburban town to another. No one thought anything of it. The vice president was elected without challenge at the annual meeting. Several months later, it was discovered that the president's new house was 35 miles from the city center, and the president was therefore ineligible for office. Can she remain in office? Does anything special need to be done to remove her from office now? Now, we've seen the answer, but you know what the answer was, but I think I could ask you honestly, when you first read this, what would have your answer have been? Forget about knowing the answer. Like, honestly, would you have gotten the right answer?
Probably not, but I also think back to 2008 when we had the Lee Rice case before the JC. In that case, he specifically had his membership lapse, but they didn't tell him about it till after it happened, and therefore they unilaterally declared him to be off of the LNC because his membership had lapsed and they hadn't had a chance to renew it. And at the time, it was like, what, are you kidding me? You have to have a vote to do that, and of course they didn't. This is a parallel to that because the eligibility terms here change the terms didn't change. The meeting them changed, and at that point, a point should be raised. Say, hey, you're no longer eligible to be president because you're outside the limit. But
right. So she was elected
right time because nobody noticed.
Yes. So here's where I think people get. Let's read the answer, and then we'll do the discussion. So, the answer is, this is not a situation when there was an error in the conduct of the vote, which would have required an immediate challenge. So let's explain that for a second, because this goes into some current. A lot of times, people will claim at a convention, we're not going to give a specific example for this one, but at a convention that, oh my God, I'm just pulling a state. I'll just say Colorado. It's never happened with Colorado. I'm just using Colorado because I live here. Oh my God, I'm looking at these minutes and it shows Colorado had 40 votes for chair, but they only had 38 delegates. That was an error. Well, that had to be caught at convention. It's displayed on the screen. You didn't catch it. It's, months later. Too bad, so sad. Even if the chair won by 2 votes, which could have been those 2 miscounted extra votes from Colorado. Actually, there is a real example in this. Back in 2018, when I was first elected secretary. Alicia was elected at large. But it was a rush. Go figure. It was a rushed election at the end. I think they suspended the rules and had people elected by plurality, which I'm not even sure you can do. I have to look at our bylaws with that. But I think your bylaws have to allow you can be elected with less than a majority vote. I don't think we were allowed to do that. But anyway,
so.
let's forget about what?
I don't think so.
We could do it for the JC. That's not like an office. But I don't think we could do that for at-large, even though it's been done a million times. Richard, you could... I think that has been an error in the past.
Anyway,
but
let's not go down the rabbit hole.
I know. But she was elected by one vote. And persons were asking for an audit of it. Gregory, under Roberts, everyone who's on the board is considered an officer, even if they're not technically an officer under the bylaws. So there's 4 officers in the bylaws, but all board members are officers, is the way a different parliamentarian explained it to me. Let me know, Richard, if you disagree. Mike and Richard know of whom I speak. But a different parliamentarian had said to me the entire board has to be by a majority, that for purposes of that section, all board members are considered officers. In the exact same way where it says removal of an officer in the disciplinary section, it doesn't make a difference if it's an at-large. They are considered an officer for that purpose. And that other parliamentarian showed me a citation, and I tend to think he was right. Maybe we can do another show on this as to whether if at-large would be considered officers for purposes of the majority vote.
It's Roberts running a yellow light to try to make it simpler and failing badly.
I'm going to see if I can find that really quickly.
Yeah. By the way, the answer that they give here is actually they're giving page citations from the 11th, not the 12th edition, which is interesting.
Oh, because this is an old one I was reading.
Yeah, it is. It's very old. I was looking at it frowning, going, "What the heck?" And I realized, I know the section they were referring to, which was 23.6, but they're given page numbers. I'm going, "Wait a minute, am I in the right one?" So I had to go. I'm
trying.
Dig out old 11th here and double check it, because yes, I still keep a copy around just in case. But
I might have to ask on the Roberts forum again, or for the first time, but to try to find that thing where it said that the board... Yeah, okay. They're treating the word officer as someone who occupies an office. So it's one of those equivocal terms. Like adjourn can mean you're stopping it, or it can mean that you're having an adjourned meeting, which is a restarted one.
By their definition, if someone's occupying the seat illegitimately, they're still an officer. And I would raise a very large bullshit flag about that.
Yeah, and Richard, our bylaws do define officers, but this other parliamentarian said to me that doesn't matter. The at-large people, for purposes of Roberts, would be considered officers as somebody occupying an office, because I was making the argument that, and this other parliamentarian told me I was wrong, and I was kind of glad to be wrong, but in distinguishing what happened with me in 2021 with Angela Keaton, who was an at-large, and there was an opinion written by was it by Hahnemann? It was by one of the authorship team. Oh, it was by it was by one of the authorship team, and I was arguing that it could be it wasn't applicable because at large it didn't fall under the Roberts requirements for a trial, because it said for officers, and at-large isn't an officer. And this other parliamentarian told me that it didn't matter. And Richard, I would say if at-large is not considered an officer, I do not think that the procedure is the same. Though I think everyone should get due process, whether it's required or not.
Our bylaws have the same process, but I think for
they don't
Roberts,
go. There's two separate sections. So
they say almost exactly the same thing.
Yes, but the bylaws
we went around on this, combining the two back a couple bylaws committees ago.
Yeah. I'm going to ask on the Roberts Forum, Richard, this question. But if the officers are limited to the 4 officers defined in the National LP bylaws, then an at-large representative is not entitled to a trial.
I would argue principles of interpretation support that.
No, because an office, if you're going to, because remember our bylaws, and I know Richard disagrees with the whole requirement of a trial to begin with, but the convention has already decided. The removal process is identical for both. However, the reason officers are entitled to a trial is because of the way the term of office is described. And that is here, except as the bylaws may provide otherwise, any regularly elected officer of a permanent society can be removed from office as follows. And then there's option 1, if the terms of office say for X years or until their successors are elected. But I fell under option 2, which is for X years and until their successors are elected. This language says only for officers. If an at-large is not an officer, they do not fall under this, and they can just be removed by a 2/3 vote.
See, but here's the deal. When I mentioned about principles of interpretation, 5668.4, if the bylaws authorize certain things, specifically other things in the same class are prohibited, it lists
It's not
officers
the same class.
those 4. That means it doesn't authorize anybody else to be an officer. The bylaws override Roberts by definition.
Well, I'm going to raise this on the forum, but if that is in fact the case, then at-large people are not entitled to a trial. Now, I would argue that everyone is. I don't care whether the rules require it or not.
That's why we were trying to combine the two in the first place a couple bylaws committees ago.
And that raises... I don't think that would clear it up. I still think then if that's the case, this can be a whole discussion on the... I really don't want to raise it on the Roberts thread because there might be some discussion I really don't want to. Oh, crap. I did my freezy thing again. Hold on. It'll come back in a minute. Oh, God damn it.
You're frozen.
Yeah, because I put the book down on this side of the desk.
You're frozen. You're frozen like this.
I want to raise it on the Roberts Forum, but there's certain persons I don't want to engage in conversation with.
We are not going to bring it up in the bylaws committee. I can guarantee you that.
Yeah, so I'm going to try to find that section. So let's move on. That's an ambiguity that maybe one day I will ask in the forum, or if Richard wants to ask in the forum. I have personal boundaries that would end up getting crossed if I asked it there. So It's up to me. You know, other people don't have to protect me and my sensitive feels. That's up to me to... Yeah, Richard would be hesitant to post it there too. Yeah. Maybe one day in one of those little unit meetings we go to where it's a much cozier group, it could be asked. Okay. Anyway, and you're right, it does cite the 11th. We'll have to translate it to the 12th. It says so.
I have the 11th here. So
okay. I think I do somewhere too. So there was no error in the conduct of the vote. In this case, the candidate was ineligible under the bylaws. So she was ineligible because at the time of the vote, she lived 35 miles from the city center rather than 30 miles. This is a
Right.
continuing breach.
But nobody
That
noticed.
means, and nobody noticed at the time, but because it's a continuing breach, a point of order does not have to be, it can be raised at any point in time as long as the breach is continuing.
Right.
You know,
And
it couldn't be raised after her.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
The 12th reference for those RONR pages is 23.5 and 23.6, by the way.
Yeah, those I kind of have memorized.
Ditto.
So, yeah. So next convention, say she decides not to rerun, and then there's somebody else that's president. You can't bring it up then. It's over and done with. That bell's
Right.
done wrong, baby. Okay. So it says, this means that the president's eligibility can be challenged by a point of order in a meeting at any time that the president remains in office.
Right.
The president cannot cure the deficiency by length of stay in office, although acts taken by the president before the challenge will remain in effect as taken under the putative president's de facto authority. They do not give a reference there. I'm wondering what their justification is for that. Now, I agree with it, but this question came up when my alleged removal in 2021 was voided. If you remember, people said...
Logically speaking, how would they unravel all that stuff?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I agree with it because it's just too much of a Gordian knot. But remember, in Reno, the question came up, what if there were votes in which John Wilford was the deciding vote, since you're voiding her removal, which means she was always the secretary that whole time, and Wilford was just the secretary pro tem in the reality of it. But practically speaking, I would agree. All of his votes counted because of whatever. But I wish they had given... I think this needs to be dealt with explicitly in Roberts. To me, that just makes logical, equitable justice sense, but there's no citation there. And I could see some pain in the ass person, which is usually you or me, but somebody like us, Hector Roos, continuing to argue. I'm not even going to insult us by saying he's like us, but anyway, I could see someone like Hector Roos making this kind of argument, but no. So,
yeah.
Now here's what's interesting, and this will become relevant in the real life example we're going to give. Moreover, the president cannot cure the defect by becoming eligible after the election. For example, in this case, by moving back to her prior home within 30 miles of the city center. A candidate must be eligible for the office at the time of the election. Now,
can we put that on a billboard and shove it in the face of every single state legislature candidate across the country who doesn't live in their districts?
But you want to know what's also interesting here, and maybe since, Richard is here, he might know. They don't give a Roberts citation for that. They give a parliamentary law citation of page 34, question 68, and they give a citation from these books, which I don't think you have copies of. They're really cool. They've got blue dust covers. Well, I have parliamentary law, but also where it says Q&A 2.
I might have parliamentary law somewhere. I have to look.
I use it all the time for my Pink Parliamentary show, but that other thing is, I know they hate being called NAP. I call them NAP. I don't care. NAP used to put out like these questions and answers that appear in the National Parliamentarian. I don't know if they still do. I haven't seen any since volume 3, I think it is. They used to put out bound books called Questions and Answers. And be volume 1, volume 2, volume 3. One of them is impossible to find, and I think it's 2, which is the one they reference, I think. I think 1 and 3 are the easy ones to find, and I have them. I have 2 out of the 3, and I can't remember which one it is that you just can't find. I need to look that up.
We need to reissue.
Hint, hint. If somebody finds it, that's a good gift for me. Anyway, so they also reference question and answer 2, page 184, question 824.
Which is the one we don't have.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's 1 and 3 that are the easy ones. But they got
Richard,
these blue covers.
Richard, you're right. The Constitution doesn't. I'm talking about state level, which is a different issue.
Okay.
Yeah, the Constitution one's U.S. Turnless versus Thornton. I know that case inside out. But yeah,
Richard, do you know which one of those little books, the question and answers ones, that's impossible to find, or do you have all 3? And I'm going to have to come to Louisiana and rob you.
Now that's a NAP violation, both ways.
Yeah, that bada bing. And then it continues. The election is therefore null and void, and the putative president is removed from office immediately upon being challenged. In this case, that means that the election was incomplete, and a special election should be held at a special meeting to vote on the replacement president. I know they assumed.
No. You can't have it be voided and still be incomplete at the same time. Incomplete means it's still in process, hasn't concluded, not that it's been totally voided out. You can't have it both ways.
Yeah, the election, her election was voided out, which means that the election.
Read the 2 sentences.
I did.
Yeah, null and void. Then they say it means it was incomplete. No, incomplete means you haven't finished it yet. Null means it just was thrown out.
I think the 2 things mean the same, but you and I have gotten into circles round and round on null and void. So I don't think people.
Is a null and void contract an incomplete contract?
It can be.
Is a complete contract null and void?
It could be null and void and incomplete for want of a valid third signature if there's 3 parties, and it's. We're not going to go round and round again on null and void because you and I disagree, because we talked about crap. What was it the time when we were talking about ratification? It's when we got into this at some point. In any event, the election still needs to happen, and they're assuming things here with a special election held at a special meeting. They're assuming that's the way you'd fill it. National bylaws would be different. If the chair was found to be ineligible, the LNC would elect a new chair. Anyway, in the meanwhile, if there's a holdover provision, now we don't have this, but a lot of assemblies do. If there's a holdover provision allowing a president to continue in office until the election of a successor, the immediate past president would resume the office of president until a special election could be held, just as the immediate past president would have remained in office under the holdover provision if there had been an incomplete election on the date of the annual meeting. So,
but if there's not a holdover provision, then we get into the argument about whether the vice president automatically ascends to the position of president. And we're not going to get into that right now either.
Yeah, because you and I disagree on that one too. I would say the vice chair.
Yes, I know. Yes, I know we disagree. You're still wrong, but anyway.
Yeah, well, I'll let you be wrong.
Bylaws say what they say.
So
anyway,
we're gonna talk about the LP example. Okay, so recently, there was one removal and a resignation, I think. Anyway, recently there were vacancies in Region 1. And and it was in the alternate positions, I believe. We're just going to say that for sake of argument. There might have been one in the primary. Whatever. Aaron Lamb moved up. It was so there was an alternate vacancy that was filled by the region. They voted, and it was filled by the region by Jim Wiley. And it was found out after his election that he was ineligible under the bylaws because he was not a sustaining member of the National Party. Steve, on his own, no one raised a point of order. I brought it to his attention that he wasn't a sustaining member. But that was just because when people get elected, I have the sheet I did when I was secretary that had everyone's membership expiration date, because whether I liked you or not, if your membership was about to expire because of the Lee Wright situation, I'd send you an email and say your membership's about to expire in a month. And I'm supposed to do, the secretary is supposed to do that anyway. On that standing agenda in the policy manual, no one knows what credentials check means. That's what that means, is to make sure everyone's a sustaining member. That's why I said, God, I loved it when the LNC members were life members, because then I never had to check them again. So I was filling out the chart with Wiley's information. I wrote Hannah Kennedy and asked when his sustaining membership would lapse, and she said he's not a sustaining member. I brought it to Steve's attention. Steve's was then like, he's ineligible under the bylaws, therefore his election is void. And people threw a fit because James, after he was allegedly already elected, or Jim, or whatever the hell we want to call him. I have a lot of things I could call him, but we're going to keep this a little bit family friendly. So he then bought a sustaining membership. And Steve's like, no, your region needs to reelect you. You can't cure it after the election. And some people were making the argument that the only time his election could have been challenged was during the pendency of the regional email ballot, or it could only be challenged by the region. But they were analogizing it because, you know, electronic ballots, you have to do an analogy. Analogizing it to the legitimacy of a vote at a convention has to be challenged at the convention. And Steve was like, no, this doesn't have to do with them doing the vote wrong. This has to do with basic eligibility for the office. Right. So Steve was, in fact, correct on this.
He was dead on the money on it, because it was a continuing breach, because he wasn't eligible, and it was called out. So the same parallel we just talked about here in this other case. He wasn't eligible, therefore he wasn't elected. And the way to cure it was to rehold the election, which the region did.
Right.
After he got the same membership, and he was elected, and that was the end of it.
Yeah.
But they were talking about threatening to take it to the JC, and they mentioned that at the meeting. I told Aaron Lamb afterwards, I said, all you got to do is just reelect him after he buys his membership. There's nothing to appeal to the JC here.
Yeah. Plus, what, a 3-day ballot, or you're going to get 100 and something signature. Like, that was just dumb. It was just dumb.
It was dumb.
A lot of people who I don't like using the word threaten, because it is a member right to appeal things. So I'm not trying to like shame anybody, but a lot of people who threaten to take things to the JC don't understand how that works. They think they could just do it. They don't realize there's like actual work. You need to show a modicum of support and all of that. Otherwise the JC would be hearing things every week.
And trust me, you would not be seeing me here with a mullet. I'd be bald, because I'd be tearing all my hair out.
So Steve was absolutely right on that. The fact that Wiley,
he nailed it.
The fact that Wiley cured it after the fact doesn't matter. They had to be reelected. Now, at that LNC meeting, which was in Grand Rapids,
I was there.
Austin Martin raised a point of order to, and he would, he kind of raised a point of order, but Steve was like, I already ruled on this on my own. And his ruling was correct, because a chair can do that, can just declare, something like that. And Austin appealed it, and he lost the appeal correctly. Though I have to say this, now that I'm not in the LNC, I can say this, I don't know this for sure. I don't think people voted to sustain Stephen's ruling because they thought he was right. I don't think they understood the issue at all. I don't think they cared whether they thought he was right. I think that vote was sheerly on factional grounds. It was just a happy. It was just a happy coincidence that Steve was also right. But if Steve had said, I don't know, but I think it was a factional vote. I don't think maybe 2 other people on the LNC even understood the issue. And the funny thing is, the person who knows the most now about Roberts on the LNC, I don't mind saying this, even though it's someone, we're not friends. He's my regional rep, so we're civil to each other, and I have conversations with him a lot, is Andrew Chatterton. I have conversations with him a lot 'cause he's still the regional rep. I can respect the office even if I'm not friends with the person. So when I have concerns, I bring them to Andrew. Aaron's basically checked out. So Andrew, like
Well,
him or not like him,
he's got his
he's the
he's
region.
got his own he's got his own local problems going on right now,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
But even before, he isn't going to, and I certainly ain't bringing anything to Wiley. So when I have a concern, I bring it to Andrew. And Andrew, to give him credit, even though we start nearly every conversation with, we don't like each other, but like nearly every conversation is like that. Or I'll write him and say, I don't agree with your ultimate point. However, you can do such and such. For instance, I don't mind saying, because he may do this, and I don't mind saying I'm the one who told him he could do this, because he is my regional rep. There's several email ballots going on right now that I think is ridiculous that Steve made email ballots when the email ballots are going to expire within 2 days of a full LNC meeting. Email ballots are not supposed to be for that. That's why we had the monthly meetings. Just get rid of the monthly meetings then and just do your quarterly or whatever in-person meeting, whatever. And Andrew and Austin don't believe they should be email ballots. I agree with them. I don't agree with how they want the vote to go. I totally disagree with them on how but I agree with them on the principle it should be an email ballot. So I told Andrew, if you think this is going a way you don't like, or you just really don't, you want it to have in-person debate, I go conditionally notice a motion for reconsideration for the next meeting on those ballots. Then you get to have your debate. I think members deserve to see the debate. It doesn't matter whether I'm going to disagree with Andrew's vote. Because if you're a betting person, you don't
transparency, says the chair of the Transparency Caucus. Yes.
Yeah. You don't even have to tell me what the motion is. On 99% of the votes, I'm going to disagree with Andrew's vote. There might be a couple I don't.
We know it's funny in Grand Rapids, talking about the Wiley situation, when the whole thing was in debate, and I was sitting there, and I was in plain view of everybody on the committee. And they started yapping about how, we'll take it to the JC. And I just started shaking my head in the audience going, guys, you really know. And I'm the only JC member there. Okay. So it's like, no, guys, you really, you don't want to try that because it's wasting everybody's time. Because by the time they brought it up and everything, it would have been resolved anyway. We'd have looked at it and said, this is a moot point. You've already cured it. Get out of here.
They were going to be stubborn, though, and not redo the election because they wanted to prove Steve wrong. And then I guess they just decided, since he wasn't going to have access to email or anything and it would take a while, that whatever.
Yeah.
But let me tell you, this is another point. You know, Roberts doesn't require this. I'm just saying as an observer. When at the December LNC meeting last year, because I believed that and I was correct, that all the charges against me were void. So I was the secretary at that December meeting. I didn't sit at home and yell, I'm the secretary. I flew my happy ass out to Rhode Island because if I really believed that, I was going to be there and present myself ready to do my duties. I knew they wouldn't allow me, but I was going to act consistently with my belief. In my opinion, if Wiley really believed he cured whatever issues and he was a legitimate Region 1 alternate, his ass should have been in Grand Rapids.
Yes.
And he could have made a big show. Now, if I were him, I would have went and I would have had a big show of getting each of my regional chairs on the phone, saying they affirmed it and getting reelected right there on the spot and made a big spectacle. That's what I would have done. That would have been a lot of fun.
Well, yeah, I moved for a 5-minute recess for a conference call with my regional chairs. Yeah.
Yeah, that like he would have stolen the show.
Yeah.
You know?
It would have been very over the top, but it also would have cured it immediately without issue, unequivocally without any controversy.
And even though Steve would have been right, it still would have been kind of embarrassing for him. even though he was
Yeah.
right, just because of the spectacle of it. So I don't think he believed he was right. I think Wiley was just like, oh, damn, I got to pay the National Party $25. All I could say is forget about the bylaw for a second. Oh, like, be still my heart to even say that. But why that? Well, maybe it's not so ridiculous, because to me, it's ridiculous. And I know I'm going to get hate for this. I don't care. To me, it's ridiculous that you can be a national convention delegate without being a member of the National Party. Ridiculous. Ridiculous. I know Chuck Moulton disagrees with me because he doesn't think you should have to sign the pledge. With everything that's going on now, yes, your fucking ass should have to sign the pledge. So, on one hand,
has become more important than ever.
Yeah, on one hand, I'd be like, what kind of nut would you have to be to think that you could be on the LNC without being a member of the National Party? But then again, I get you can be a national convention delegate without being a national sustaining member. So maybe it does make some kind of sense. But to me, it's like, you need to be a member of the organization that you're trying to sit on the board of.
See, I used to be a big advocate on Chuck's perspective that you don't need to be a national member to be a delegate because the states determine who the delegates are. But at the same time, I've come around to a different line of thinking on it, that if you're going to be at the convention, you're going to be a delegate, you're there to participate in national party business, you better be a fucking national party member.
Yeah, and I mean, and by that,
one of the reasons why I'm a life member now.
Yeah, and I mean sustaining member like that. You got to have skin in the game, and
exactly.
I'm wondering. So we finished that question. Now we're just
people complain it's pay to play, but you know what? We're a private organization,
and it's politics. I mean, it's $25. Okay, if you can't afford the $25 membership, I doubt you can afford to fly out to convention. And
if you can't afford a $25 membership, you shouldn't be eating out. But anyway.
And the fact is, there are plenty of people, if someone really wants to go to national convention and can't afford it, that will buy you a membership. There's open offers, and now it might need to be somebody who's ideologically aligned with you. You know, like a Mises Caucus member is not going to buy one for somebody who's rabidly anti, but you can find someone in your ideological circle to sponsor you. That is allowed in the national bylaws. So, no.
It's very much allowed. Well, it's allowed via precedent of the rights ruling, too. So, which will let the bylaws change in the first place.
So we answered that question. Steve was right. You have to be eligible at the time of election. It's a continuing breach. So now it's just chit chat, because I think I know your view on this. But what's interesting is how you said you changed your mind, because you know what people like to do. People find shit that I wrote back in 2018 as like, Ree, you're saying something different now. You mean 7 years of experience and learning more about Roberts and learning more about the party and seeing more of the tricks can be played? I've changed my mind.
It's scary, isn't it?
You know, I have opinions now that past me would have kicked my ass for, probably, but it's from experience.
You live, you learn, and you grow from it. I mean, that's just the way it works.
You know, I could say some of my hot takes, but here's one. But this one I've believed for a while, and I'm curious your opinion. Not only do I think national convention delegates should be sustaining members of the party. To me, that's just a no-brainer. I also think the national party needs a seasoning period, and the cutoff should be the seasoning period should be the delegate allocation cutoff date.
Meaning that you can't be a national member after that cutoff date to go to convention.
You have to be a national member, just like with Colorado. You have to be 90 days before. This would be when the conventions are in May. The delegate cutoff date is always October 31st of the year prior.
Everybody froze.
You're not frozen.
I was for a second. Both froze at the same time. Now we're still chopping.
You are.
Maybe. It's cutting in and out. Anyway, you were saying.
So there's two reasons for that. One, people need to at least be marinated a little bit. Okay, I think we should have learned this. with the Mises takeover.
Wait a minute. Is the correct term marinated, stewed, or slowly boiled?
All of the above. They're not they're not mutually exclusive. But also, I think you need to have been a body that helped contribute to the calculation of the total that the state gets to send. So
Right.
that's why the delegate allocation cutoff is logical. It's not arbitrary. There's a whole reason before it, because any other time is pretty arbitrary, even though that date is arbitrary in itself, but at least it's basing it on something that's already in the bylaws.
Right.
So,
no, I can understand that perspective. I would also argue that maybe even more than that, because even if it's whatever the hell it is, 5-6 months out, whatever, on average, roughly something like that.
I think it's 7 months. It's 7. It's like the last day of the 7th month prior. The way it's worded in the bylaws is crazy.
It's goofy. Basically, that's what a direct calendar date, bam, and call it good. But I think it may be even a little longer than that, even because people need to be paying attention to what the hell's going on. How many times have we gone into convention, and you and I have done this many times, where people, they waste so much time on the floor because they don't know what the hell is going on, because they're not paying attention, they haven't done their advanced homework, and they don't know what they're doing.
But we have nothing now.
They might help get that straightened. I know we don't. Yeah. We don't, and it's a problem.
So going to the delegate allocation deadline is at least something.
Yeah.
But to me, the bigger problem is
people ask questions of what's going on. I want to stand up and yell, "Pay the fuck attention!"
Well, but here's the thing. Sometimes, even if they want to, they can't. I'm not saying this always happens, but since we have no notice requirements for bylaws and platform changes, sometimes they may not even know what they are until the day of convention.
The reports are out there if people want to go.
There's no requirement for it, though. The bylaws, it's only been recently, and I'm going to give Alicia Matson a lot of credit for this. When she was on all those committees, she really got things organized. But if you go back to the 80s, the bylaws committee, because they didn't meet electronically and stuff like that, they did almost all of their work the day before the convention.
Yeah, the old very old school.
Yeah, but you can, because we never updated our bylaws, you can still do that. The bylaws committee does not have to release a report at all. They could just present proposals. As long as they're voted on, you guys don't have to release a report.
Yeah, we just do it as
a platform.
The delegates.
So even if people wanted to get informed, there needs to be a notice structure in place so that things are out there so that people can. Now, I know people can say now, but they can watch the videos of the bylaws meeting or whatever. Not every committee is really good about that. And in fact, no shade on you guys, but there hasn't been videos uploaded except for the first one, to Lpedia. So people, and it's only been recently. Committee? Yep.
Oh, because they're out there. They're on the SharePoint.
They're not uploaded to Lpedia. And Sam, Sam's not on the bylaws, but if they're sent over to us, or we can get them, but nobody's uploaded them.
I don't do the Lpedia stuff, even though I'm the committee secretary. The
minutes aren't uploaded. Nothing about any of the proposals. It isn't like when the last bylaws committee, when every proposal was put up and you could go to the Lpedia page and track everything. You can't expect members, even though you want them to be informed, you can't expect them to attend bi-weekly meetings, weekly meetings, whatever it might be. That it's the people in the committee that are expected to dedicate that much time. And it's only been recently that the bylaws committee has had a public email list. I saw Paul just announce that. It wasn't publicly viewable before. And I don't think it's reasonable necessarily to expect every delegate to watch an email list and the email debate on bylaws is tedious when you're freaking on the committee. You know how bad I hated. Rob used to always want to debate shit on the list, and I'm like, nope, save it for the meeting. We meet like, was it every other week? Whatever it was that time, every other Thursday.
Yeah.
I'm like, save it for the meeting. I'm not debating on.
He's gotten better at that.
Well, that's me. I'm not criticizing Rob for that. Some people love written debate on the email list, not me. I hate it for bylaws. I don't mind it for other issues, but for bylaws and platform, it's just too tedious. You need back and forth. Anyway, so yeah, those are some defects there. So do we have anything else miscellaneous to talk about? Because Wayne and I are getting in the hot tub. It's heated up. It's at 104 degrees right now. So
only 104?
That's like on this one, it's some kind of Colorado law. Like it's got a limiter on it.
Oh, for crying out loud.
Yeah. I'm sure if it's not warm enough, Wayne, government, I hope you're not listening. But anyway, it's at the maximum temperature right now, at least for the current configuration.
The hot water coming out of your hot water heater at your tap, you'll find it's hotter than that.
Well, it's at 104 right now. So I got to see if a bathing suit will still fit me, because I haven't worn a bathing suit since Florida. And that's been like 15 years.
Well, then you're going to have to cover the place over so you can skinny dip.
Yeah. But I actually, believe it or not, God, now we're really getting into the weeds, and it has nothing to do with Roberts. I had they say as you get older, like you gain 2-3 pounds a year, you know. I've pretty much stayed, I think the configuration of the weight has changed, but I've stayed pretty much the same weight since for 10 years now. I might fluctuate 5 pounds. Now, between 30 and 40, I gained a lot. I think I gained about 20 pounds between 30 and 40, because I was super skinny in my 20s.
I've gained about 20 pounds in the past year.
Yeah, I think I gained 20.
Which is absolutely terrible.
Well, I was too skinny because you know I'm tall. I was 130 pounds when I was in my 20s. Like I was rail thin.
I was 140 pounds in my 20s.
So anyway, yeah, but I probably will still fit in it. It doesn't mean it's still probably not something anyone wants to see, except for Wayne. But I think I probably still have something that fits.
Just get a couple of those big patio umbrellas that cover over things so people can't see over the fence, and just don't worry about the suits then.
Let me see here. I'm looking up weather because it's not cold here in Colorado right now. It's 62. It's not cold. The low is going to be 40.
That's comfortable that's comfortable for an evening in the hot tub.
Yeah. It's not going to, oh my God, we're getting pretty warm. It's not going to get cold here for a while.
Well, the last time I was in a hot tub in Colorado, it was up in Vail and it was snowing, and that was 30 some odd years ago.
Well, we want to do that. We want to go out when it's snowing. Like that. Yeah. That's like the idea. So
yeah, it's a blast.
As a former Coloradan, what's your guess this year for when we'll say Castle Rock, my house? What's your guess this year for when my house will get its first snow?
But
we're gonna write this down. November 20th. Okay, where's my pens? I don't want to freeze up. Somebody, hold on. I'm gonna put it on my phone because we're gonna see who's right. Okay, or closest to right. You said November 20th. It looks like. I'm sorry.
It's raining.
Just started. I'm gonna go for December 5th. It's been kind of warm. So we'll see who's right now.
Yeah, it just started raining here. Yesterday we had 1.5 inches pouring rain all day long. So.
Okay, so I guess that's it. We already have something planned for next show, which is something to do with filling the blanks, I think. It's
Yeah, it
not really
was. I
filling the
forget.
blanks, but it's something like they analogize to it, and I think it was in the AIP journal. It wasn't in National Parliamentarian. I think it was the
Yeah.
American Institute, which I won't be getting that anymore, sad face, because I didn't renew my membership because I'd be too broke. And
Uh,
since I don't have any certifications from them, oh, this reminds me though, Mike, I don't know if you'd be interested in this. I know you're
mm,
still dealing with NAP and stuff like that. I think it would be interesting on the show when if and when we can get into a regular schedule, which might be after convention because you got bylaws and everything else going on.
uh,
But I'd like us to go through uh, AI the AIPSC like chapter by chapter and learn it.
that could be an interesting thing to do. How big is
Yeah,
it?
because I mean it's the second most used parliamentary authority.
How big is it?
That's what
The
she
book.
said. Um, I've got. Let me see. I don't have
The,
it here,
the
but
book. The book. You horny ninny.
it's slightly bigger than this.
That's what she said.
Yeah, it's. I'd say it's about a quarter inch bigger than this, or thicker. It's not very long, but it's thick.
That's what she said.
So, I think that would be interesting because there are some things in there like we might prefer, and it would be kind of cool to go, yeah, but in this, one thing in there that I both like and don't like. One thing in there is everything that's in the bylaws. So this makes it easy. If it's in the
Yeah,
bylaws, it can't be suspended. There's no such thing as a bylaw in the nature of a rule of order.
fine by me. It makes life a lot easier.
What if, right? And then organizations, I think, will be smarter maybe about what they put in the bylaws, but then you end up with real dumb things like people putting the agenda in the bylaws, and then
Uh, you can't. You
it's
can't
it
change
is
the
what it
agenda.
is. Yeah.
Yeah. Gotta be careful in some ways. There's always traps and loopholes.
Yes. And I haven't eaten dinner. Uh, so I'll have to bring dinner in the hot
Go
tub.
eat some dinner and then go make out with Wayne in the hot tub. Okay.
So Richard does point out here, this is interesting. So it's the second most popular. He goes, but it's used by only about 1% of organizations. True. But we're
Yeah.
libertarians. We're the third largest political party, but we only get 1% of the vote. So
Listen, we are the 1%.
I feel right now you're now making me a fan of AIPSC. I think as a matter of principle, the Libertarian Party ought to adopt AIPSC. We got to root for the underdog here. Isn't it the dentists that use it? Like, I think out of like the major medical like groups,
I
I think
don't
the
know.
dentists use it for some reason.
Could you imagine having a bylaws proposal to switch from Roberts to AISPC at the convention?
Um, the New Mexico old Lucchini
Robert,
group did
the
that.
anti-Roberts folks would love it, and everybody else would hate it, and I'd be sitting there going, "Oh, brother."
The anti-Roberts folks would end up hating it though for some of the things, but
Yeah.
something it has, I can't remember the name of it, of the motion, or I don't even know if it's called a motion. Again, I'm speaking out my booty a little bit here because like I don't really know it, but there's cutting the Gordian knot is in there. And we do that a lot, even though it's not something under Roberts. And what that is when you have someone who moves to divide a substitute, when you're way in the weeds and no one can figure out where the hell you are, AIP has
Well, but
something where
we,
you could
we just
just
want to
say,
divide the substitute to create a blank.
yeah, well, if you get so far in the weeds that will take you a half hour to unwind everything, AIP actually has something formal where you could just say, we're wiping the chessboard clean and we are starting over. And you're allowed to do that rather than the pretend like we do at LNC meetings where they're like, oh, I didn't mean to say that. I didn't mean to make that. And then, whoever's the chair goes, what motion? I didn't hear you make a motion. And we all pretend and go along with that. Yeah. Well, they actually have something for that I think is pretty cool. Even though I'm deeply suspicious of dentists. So. Particularly dentists that look like magicians. Wayne and I have had this conversation. I cannot have a dentist that looks like a magician. I know that came up in a Seinfeld episode, but I'd always felt that way. I want to know if magician.
How the hell would a dentist look like a magician?
Oh my God. I've known so many dentists that look like magicians.
Are we talking David Copperfield DDS, or are we talking
Yes, like David Copperfield. No, like David Copperfield, like very like suave but like in a.
So did they actually make your cavities disappear or not?
Well, I can't have a dentist that looks like a magician.
Walks
there's
with a
plenty
cape
of
and a top hat, pulls a rabbit out. Yeah.
I want to know what parliamentary authority the magicians' organizations use. That's our homework assignment. They've got to have something.
I would argue it's ISPC because then they can make all the bad motions disappear.
Yeah. Okay, we're done. Put a fork in her.
We're finished too.
Yeah. So that was fun. So for once, I'm saying Steve's right about something. So there you go, Steve. I'm not always saying negative shit about you. I'm actually saying something really positive right now. So we're going to leave it on that note. All right, Mike. I hope you have an awesome night. I'm getting in my bathing suit and getting in the hot tub.
Enjoy. Catch you later.
Okay, let me do the closing music and I'm going to be disconnected. Bye-bye.
Let's hear the opposition side. Like a stubborn donkey's bray, all opposed. You say nay, opposed. Opposed. The motion carries anyway.